Biliyor musun? Erken rezervasyon başladı. Yazın en renkli fırsatları Cyprusparadise.com'da. %40, %50 hatta %60'a varan kaçırılmaz indirimler. Erken rezervasyon yap, uçak bileti fiyatına paket tatili al. Uygun fiyata Kıbrıs tatilinin adresi Cyprusparadise.com. Zaman akıp gitmeden acele edin. Bir bakmışsınız yaz gelmiş. Cyprus Paradise. Tatiliniz bizimle güvende.
Kalitenin, güvenin, hızlı teslimatın adresi Ancon Furniture. Ancon Furniture ailesi olarak yeni ürünler ile hizmete devam etmekteyiz. Yeni model koltuk takımlarımız, yatak mekanizmaları bir dokunuş ile açılıp bir dokunuş ile kapanabilmektedir. Bir dokunuş ile açtığımız yatak mekanizmasının yatak çarşafı kullanıma hazır, serili olarak içinden çıkmaktadır. Yıl sonuna kadar herhangi bir koltuk takımı alan her müşterimize akıllı sehpa hediyemizdir. En iyi ürün, en iyi fiyat. Sadece Ancon Furniture'da. Bize uğramadan karar vermeyin. En iyisini biz yapana kadar daha iyisi yok.
Hello and welcome to our show on Eurogauge TV. Today we'll be speaking about the Cyprus peace talks and about the lobby efforts for recognition of the TRNC. I am your host today. My name is Ertan Karpazli, and I'd like to first of all begin by introducing our three esteemed guests. First of all, we have Alev Adil. She is a writer, an academic, and a poet. We also have Baroness Meral. She's a member of the Liberal Democrats and also a member of the House of Lords. And we have, last but not least, Mehmet Bayramoglu. He is the ÜBP representative here in London. ÜBP, of course, being the National Unity Party, the ruling party of Northern Cyprus. So I'd like to really, first of all, begin by addressing the elephant in the room. For those of you who are fortunate enough to... We were discussing, again, the Cyprus issue, and we had three guests, one of them being a Conservative MP, Roger Gale. We also had the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, and we also had Niyazi Kızılyürek, who is a member, an MEP of the Akıl Party, which is based in southern Cyprus. And on that show, there was some controversy in that the guests were declaring the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus a place that many of us call home, and an illegal occupation, and which very naturally drew some kind of criticism and some kind of backlash in Turkish Cypriot news outlets, both here in the UK and in Cyprus. So we want to really just address this issue, and if you all remember, the host of that program was one of our guests today, Alev Adil, who herself, in her own words, described the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus as illegal and an occupation. And obviously she has been seen some of the feedback that has been given to her since that show, some of the comments. So I just want to begin, Alev, by giving you the opportunity to share some of your reactions to those comments.
Hi, I haven't actually been forwarded much other than I saw some stuff on Twitter which was telling me I'd better never go to TRNC. I live in TRNC and I'm a citizen, and you don't have the right to tell me I can't live in my own country because you don't agree with me. Also, Mehmet Bey wrote to me, and there was something in a paper in Cyprus. I didn't see anything in the paper here, but I hope people will share it with me. But anyway, Mehmet Bey wrote basically saying that he was very annoyed with what I said because he disagreed with me, and that Jeremy and Niazi lived in a dream world, but I came from the planet Mars. I quite like this planet Mars idea. Calling occupants, serve interplanetary craft. So I didn't express any views on that program because I was in the unenviable seat that you're in, where you're kind of thinking, I have to manage the time, I have to ask the questions. I did speak very technically. I was trying to make the distinction, not in Cyprus, the internationally recognized Republic is the TRNC, which is an illegal entity. That's why we're going to Geneva. That's why we keep going to talks. That's why we can't fly directly. That's why our passports don't mean anything. That's why we have an economy that's failing. That's why our youth in Cyprus are really suffering, as well as everyone else. We need legal recognition. We need to live in a state, in a legal entity. And we can't go on like this because we're not going on like this. The situation keeps changing. So it's illegal, whether you think it's right that it's illegal or not. And I don't. I think Turkish Cypriots deserve to live in a legal entity. Is it occupied? Does the Turkish army keep a whole section of people there? Yes. Other ways in which we could say it's occupied. How could we say that it's occupied? Well, all of its institutions have to deal through Turkey. So, for instance, if you work in the university sector, you have to be making sure that you're going along with the guidance of, not merely of Rodak, but of YÖK, of the Turkish thing, because you don't have recognition. So everything has to go through Turkey. So all our institutions and our culture are being subsumed through Turkey by necessity. But quite apart from that, we have a very, very difficult political situation at hand, both in the way that the president of Turkey has interfered in our politics. For instance, he didn't like the comments that our former president Akıncı made about the Syrian war and said that they should be attacked. There were attacks on Şener Levent, but the most recent case is Abdullah Korkmazan, who accused, who said that Tatar was wanted for fraud by the serious fraud squad in the UK, and he's now been accused of slander. He's looking at 5 years in prison. We've had arrests for graffiti on Love Erdogan posters. We don't know who put up these Love Erdogan posters. Why, if we're not an occupied country, do we have posters saying love the president of another country? And why would you again arrest someone like Korkmazan in the middle of the night for someone graffitiing a poster? Again, it was nothing to do with him. This is to do with hounding people. This is to do with freedom of expression. So things are getting very much darker in Cyprus very, very fast. Our human rights, our freedom of expression are under threat. And I think that's something that a lot of the Cypriots based in London don't realise. Also, I think that it's difficult when you're in London to know how difficult it is to speak out. So it's a very brave number of people who do actually go on these demonstrations and speak out, because if you have a job, you can lose your job, or it's a small place, your relatives can lose their job. You know, anything in a small community has effects quite apart from the fact that we've had unprecedented arrests. We've had, again, a horrible thing recently. The Committee for Missing Persons, a bizonal, bicommunal committee, worked to find the remains of a tragic killing in Murathan, the Akansoy family that was slaughtered in '74 by Greek Cypriots. The family wanted a private funeral. They wanted to grieve. They wanted dignity. They wanted a private funeral. And the president has because he's angry, they wouldn't have a national ceremony, tweeted about this, so that the family have received, again, trolling and death threats. Now, I received a little bit of trolling and no death threats. I received a little bit of trolling after the last program, but after a comment I put under an Akıncı post when he was having all these problems, he was running in the marathon, and I wrote a comment saying, good luck, endless liderimiz. And I got a whole lot of death threats, rape threats, things about how I was the bastard spawn of the British, I was a Greek Cypriot whore. I mean, this trolling is part of a much deeper, much nastier, not only international modern thing, but it's part of this silencing Cypriots and silencing debate. So I just want to really signal that our freedom of expression and our rights are really, really under threat in Cyprus at the moment.
Thank you for your elaboration. It's definitely a very interesting answer you've given us. So you have mentioned that your reason for calling Northern Cyprus legal is because it has no legal representation, which I'm sure everyone will agree with, even those who are seeking for the recognition of Northern Cyprus. And in terms of the kind of attitude towards what you say is an occupation, it seems that your grievances mainly come from human rights abuses, which you call human rights abuses in Northern Cyprus, and you believe that much of this comes from Turkey, the Republic of Turkey. But I'm sure you do understand. Obviously, you have the right for your own opinion, and you have the right to express it as you please. And obviously, we don't condone any kind of aggressive clampdown on anyone's right to express themselves. But I'm sure you do understand that for many Turkish Cypriots, even those who are born in the UK, even those who are my age, who weren't alive at the time of the war in 1974, we've all kind of grown up with these stories of the war and the atrocities, the massacres that were committed against the Turkish Cypriots by the Greek Cypriots. So therefore, it is quite normal for many Turkish Cypriots, I believe, to be alarmed somewhat by the comments that you made on that show. And I know that, as you mentioned in your answer, one of those people is actually another guest today, Mr. Mehmet Bayramoglu, who is here representing the UBP, which is obviously the main party campaigning for the recognition of North Cyprus right now. Mr. Mehmet Bayramoglu, could you... Oh, go ahead, please, Alev.
I just want to say, I didn't say anything to alarm anyone. Whether we want Turkey in there and whether we want it to be legal or not, I just used a description. I'm a born and bred Turkish Cypriot. I mentioned the Akansoy family who lost that. We all have a range of opinions. The one official story told by UBP is not the one that all Turkish Cypriots feel. It's not even one that a majority feel. It was a very narrow majority by one. It's like Brexit. It was a 50-50 vote in the last election. So to say it's illegal, it's not controversial. You might not like it, you can disagree, but to get verbally violent about it isn't on.
Okay, I think Meral wants to say something, but before I get to you, Meral, I just want to go to Mehmet.
Can I just ask that we make it brief so we can get into the new programme? We're still talking about the old programme, and I'm feeling that, we need to sort of move on a bit.
I just want to address the elephant in the room, because obviously Mehmet Bayramoglu is here. He wants to express some of his criticisms on our platform today. So I just want to give him that opportunity, and then after that we'll be moving on to the main topic of our show. So Mr. Mehmet Bayramoglu, could you please share with us how you felt when you were watching that show on March the 18th, and if you have any criticisms you'd like to share on the show, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I will be very brief, as Meral was saying. Last week's program was a one-sided Greek propaganda, I'm afraid to say. the participants, I think Roger, Jeremy Corbyn, and Kızıl Yürek, and moderator Alev Hanım, they all spoke as one voice pro-Greek. There was no one there to argue from the Turkish side. There is nothing illegal about TRNC. The illegal is the Republic of Cyprus, who is in the sole custody of the Greek Cypriots. We were forced by force of arms way back in 1963. In 1963, Makarios demanded 10 amendments to the constitution, or 13 amendments. We rejected. When we rejected, Makarios used force of arms and forced us out of the government. So the illegitimate government is the Republic of Cyprus, which is at the sole custody of the Greek Cypriots. Turkey, as per guarantor power, Zurich and London agreements give legitimate right to Turkey to take unilateral action, and that's what Turkey did. So therefore, TRNC is not under occupation. Turkish troops came to rescue us. I'm sure Alev, you probably knows, but he doesn't want to admit it. On the 17th of July, 1974, Nikos Samson, and I'm a live witness to it, proclaimed that this is a Hellenic Republic of Cyprus. Can you hear me? Can you hear me at all?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So therefore, having declared enosis on the 17th of July, 1974, Turkey had no alternative. Enosis, by the way, means unification with Cyprus uniting with Greece. Therefore, Turkey had every right to intervene to save Turkish Cypriots from total slaughter and also take what rightfully belongs to us. So there is nothing illegality. There is no occupation. The occupation is in the south. The Greek Cypriots have occupied the Republic of Cyprus. So that's, I think I should finish at that on this question.
I'm sorry, Alev, you're holding a sign that I can't read on the screen. What does that say?
It says 12th of February 1977. And then I can hold up another one that says 19th of May 1979.
Okay, I see where this is going. And so I'm gonna stop that there.
This is going to how Denktash, our president Denktash, had fought for a bison or bicommunal.
Okay, before we go on a tangent, I'd just like to say that my comments on what Mehmet has just said, I'm sure as Turkish Cypriots, we've all heard these statistics and these figures and these historical facts over and over again. And I feel that, Mr. Mehmet, what you've given us is definitely something that many Turkish Cypriots have been brought up with, something that many of us agree with. But unfortunately, the reality is that outside of the Turkish Cypriot community, it's very hard to find people that agree with that interpretation of history. However, I do sense that, say, 30 years ago, we were more likely to find Turkish Cypriots who were very happy to accept your interpretation of history. Whereas today, it seems that an opposition voice to that interpretation, one that I feel that Alev has voiced in her comments, is starting to gain more and more traction. So I want to ask actually Baroness Meral-Ece, as a British Turkish Cypriot yourself, I believe you were born in London, weren't you, Meral?
Yes.
Yes, so my information is correct there. So I want to ask you, from the perspective of somebody who's been born and raised in the UK, away from the Cyprus conflict, away from, physically being involved in that war, your observation on why do you feel that Mehmet Bey's argument is starting to lose steam among the Turkish Cypriots themselves?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on the programme as well. I, as a politician, as the only Turkish Cypriot in British politics, in the British Parliament, perhaps I take a wider perspective. I can step back. I didn't step back years ago. For many years, my family were very intimately involved in what happened in Cyprus all through the 60s. And we lost many members of my mum's family in the village of Alaminyo, one will know about. So I grew up with the tragedies through the 60s. So I'm not that distant, really. But now, I'm here as a politician, as a member of the House of Lords, I take a slightly wider view, and I would like to take a view of how the world perceives us, and particularly the United Kingdom. Things have changed and history is fading in people's lives. But for Turkish Cypriots, I respect the fact that they have a history, and many have suffered. Many have suffered on the island of Cyprus. So I respect that. I don't think it helps, as Mehmet just outlined, to keep talking about what happened. We know what happened. It's like Britain talking about the war all the time. We've moved on now. We need to talk about where we are now and what we can achieve as Turkish Cypriots. What is possible to achieve on the international stage? What is possible? They're coming up pre-talks, +1 talks are coming up. Those talks are really to explore a way from my information for decades, and they're getting rather fed up with it. I don't think they want to carry on forever. But the Turkish Cypriots, what I don't hear, and I hear that President Tatar is, elected, he wants a two-state solution, and I know Mr. Mehmet Bey supports that. What I don't hear is a plan as to how to achieve that. And it's no use going back to Makarios and NLC. That's finished. There's no NLC anymore. Greece is in a different place. Greece is not interested in Cyprus at all. In fact, they're rather fed up with President Anastasiades as well, because they're trying very hard to create better bilateral relations with Turkey. That's in their interest. They're really not interested in Cyprus anymore. So things have changed. The world has changed. And let's move on. Let's us change as well. And let's deal with what we are and where we are. Is it possible to have a two-state solution? Who are you going to negotiate with? The UN is out. The EU is out. So apart from Turkey, who are you going to negotiate with to achieve this two-state solution? And let's look at the implications, what it means. The majority, as I understand it, of Turkish Cypriots have got a Cyprus EU passport. That would go. That's gone. You'd create a hard border, a separate country. You're talking about annexation with Turkey. How many Turkish Cypriots want to be annexed and part of Turkey, given what's going on in Turkey at the moment? This is the reality. Turkey's economy is suffering, so of course North Cyprus's economy as well, because it is wholly dependent economically on Turkey. It's not viable. In order to find the definition of an independent sovereign country, you need to be economically viable, not reliant on another country. It's got a permanent population, that's good, but it's very much reliant on an outside power. So it hasn't got the conditions. And even if it did have the conditions, there's no country in the UN Security Council that supports this. So how will it ever happen? The last country that gained independence and was recognised by the UN Security Council was Bangladesh in 1972, because the UN Security Council, the 5 permanent members, were persuaded that Bangladesh should be an independent country. The more recent new country was Sudan. So South Sudan broke away from Sudan. There was a Sudan agreed to this. So in order for the TRNC to be a separate state, the recognised country is Cyprus. The ruling party who are pushing this two-state solution is, are you being honest with Turkey? You're giving them the facts so negative, and it's such a waste of time. I mean, I got into some discussions on Facebook trying to educate are very supportive of Turkish Cypriots and their plight, the isolation, the the real problems that young people are facing, is to keep raising the profile, keep putting down questions, talking to the Foreign Office. These are the only ways that I can lobby. But I find there's a complete lack of interest from the TRNC government to do any lobbying. They've done nothing in the last 30 years. Nothing. There's been no lobbying. The Greek Cypriots spend millions on lobbying. That's why they've got MPs queuing up to support them. That's why you just gave an example of some MPs who are on your programme last week. Why do you think that happened? That happened because they're investing. They've been investing in the British Parliament, taking MPs and members of the House of Lords over to Cyprus, having meetings with them, putting their point of view across. The Turkish Cypriots sadly think, oh, we're here, we exist, so everyone's nose up. Nobody knows anymore. And I think what Turkish Cypriots have singularly failed is to properly invest in the office here. This is the largest Turkish Cypriot diaspora outside in London, in England, outside of the TRNC, and there's limited investment. There's no money for anything. I think the staff there and the Oya Hanım and others are trying to do the best they can. They work extremely hard, but with limited resources. So if you don't believe in it, if you don't believe in yourself as a country, as a nation, and you don't put the money there, how do you expect anyone else to support you? You've got to put the investment in. And I think it's very depressing that I feel, as a Turkish Cypriot myself, I feel it very strongly, that I try very hard with very good colleagues to put down questions about, all sorts of aspects about the isolation, about Turkish Cypriots, about educational rights, all sorts of things, cultural, music, sports events. And there's no backup. There's no one coming in, from the Turkish Cypriot TRNC or anyone else coming in or writing letters to the Times or writing to the Prime Minister or the Foreign. There's no one doing that. It's like, I'm afraid this is what happens with countries that have become very isolated. They've turned in on themselves. So they're fighting amongst themselves and talking amongst themselves, but they're not talking to the world. So that's me. I don't agree with you, Mehmet Bey, but I'm not going to insult you. That's your views. I respect your views. Of course, I didn't vote for Brexit. I didn't vote for Brexit. All the people that voted for Brexit. It's madness because we live in, this
important points there. And I am going to give Mehmet a chance to give his response to that. But before I move on to Mehmet, I just want to ask Alev a bit of a personal question. So please forgive me if this is a bit too personal. But obviously you've got some very interesting views which might go against the mainstream of Turkish Cypriots, even contemporarily or at least historically.
They don't.
But
they don't.
I just want to know, have you always held these views, or were these views developed over time, and at what point?
Well, I don't understand what views you're talking about, because we haven't actually discussed my views. I mean, I agree with Meral that a two-state solution is just dead in the water. I won't go over why, because she's put it beautifully. I believe in a bicommunal federal solution, which is what Denk Dashbey proposed. I was putting up dates, 12th of February 1977, then it's 19th of May 1979. I mean, he was going for that. So they're going against Denk Dash. So we're the ones who put forward the idea of a bicommunal, bifederal state. So I haven't stated my views, but that's what I'd like. It's nothing controversial. It's not controversial to state facts, whether you like them or not. You were saying people might be triggered. Yes, people might have lived through traumas. I lived through traumas. I lost my home. I'm from Cyprus. You don't need to tell me what happened in the 60s and 70s. I was there. I mean, when we talk to each other, we really have to be gentle and remember that there are people who are directly influenced, including me. People who are directly influenced don't necessarily want to be living under Turkey's rule. The Akansoy family, they put out a statement saying it's fascism that did this. They didn't want a state funeral. Mehmet Bey here sent me some links from his Facebook to things that he wrote. This isn't me going through his thing. These are things he sent me, okay? And so with pictures of a demonstration about the arrest of people for graffitiing posters, etc. He put, now I'm translating, I can read the Turkish, or maybe he'll share the post again. In the TNC now, spoiled behavior, attitude and traitorousness have become rife and uncontrollable. Turkish Cypriots living in the TRNC are people who are incapable of self-governance. All in all, if the motherland cannot appoint a district governor, not improve in the country. So this is from the National Unity Party saying that Turks don't serve their own country. We need a governor coming in. This is what Mehmet Bey sent me himself. He sent me something else saying, if the shepherd lets the flock run free, the goats spread to every side. Comparing
Can I just ask,
Turkish Cypriots to goats.
can I intervene? Can I just ask on this governor? I'm very interested in this because is it official UBP policy that North Cyprus should be annexed by Turkey? Because then there would be a governor, just there was under British rule. Are we now going to go under Turkish rule and have a governor? We might as well forget elections then. Is that? I mean, I'm very alarmed when I hear that.
I think
that's
a valid question to ask, and I do plan to move on to Mehmet.
I mean, I do
next.
worry about this. That some people are so close now they can't actually see what's going on, and we got independence from the British colonial rule in 1960. Are we saying now that we're going into annexation? How many Turkish Cypriots want to be annexed by Turkey? I don't think there's a majority there. I'd be very surprised if a majority of Turkish Cypriots want that. So just, I'd like an answer to that, because I'm very alarmed if I hear that.
Alev, please finish.
But I also want to just briefly say, again, on speaking out, speaking privately, members of the National Unity UBP party are really disturbed that they weren't allowed to choose their own leaders in their leadership election. Speaking off the record, Turkey didn't like anyone they chose. The government is still in abeyance because they're not allowed to choose leaders. So politics is a really correction. You're asking as to my views. I was a little girl. I was in 1974 when it happened. I was there when the tanks rolled in. I threw flowers at the tanks and they threw sweets at us. I thought that I had been saved. I've been living in Cyprus for the last 3 years. It's incredibly difficult. Every day you live through practical difficulties and all sorts of human rights and freedom of expression difficulties, which it's not a stable situation. So that's what I'm saying. I would also like to emphasize, I'm not a member of any party. Yeah. I'm not representing anyone other than myself.
Thank you, Alev. I want to hear from Mehmet now because he's been silent for an awfully long time. And I do want to kind of raise some of the points that Meral has already raised, and a few points of my own, actually. Now, I, as a Turkish Cypriot who has been kind of following the politics and following the history of what's going on in Cyprus, I personally am a little bit confused as to why all of a sudden UBP is pushing for the recognition of North Cyprus now particularly. And the reason why I'm confused is because I'm looking back, say, 30 years ago, and it seems to me in 1983, when the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus was first declared as a state, there was a lot more consensus among Turkish Cypriots back then. I mean, keep in mind, in 1983, UBP was not even the majority in the Turkish Cypriot parliament when it went to the parliamentary vote and the parliament voted for the establishment of an independent state. So even the left-wing parties, the opposition parties, were in favor at that time of having Northern Cyprus as an independent state. And I believe that, you know, at the same time you had countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, you had the autonomous province of Nakhchivan of Azerbaijan. They voluntarily stepped up and they recognized the Turkish Cypriot Northern Cyprus. Surely that was the golden opportunity. And of course back then these opinions that have maybe developed over time, people like Alev, for example, were probably a lot more in favor of recognition back then than they are today. And now it seems that this is coming up now when, quite frankly, even Turkish Cypriots themselves, as we've seen with Meral and Alev, even we as a community, we're not entirely behind. There's no consensus behind recognition right now. So what I want to really know is, why now?
Is it for me? Is it for that?
So could you speak up?
Can
please?
Is it for me to? Can
Yes,
I
yes,
speak
that's
now?
you, Mehmet.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, he's inviting you.
Thanks very much. Since 1968, for the last 53 years, we've been negotiating with the Greek Cypriots to form a federation. It has not succeeded. Way back in 2004, Greek Cypriots refused to endorse the Annan Plan, which I thank God, because that was the end of Turkish Cypriots. So we must thank Papadopoulos and Aker and all the party for voting against it. Again, in 2017, in Crans-Montana, for the last time, we negotiated federation. Greek Cypriots have no desire to share anything with us, none whatsoever. And why should they? They've been recognized by the Western world and United Nations as the legitimate government of Republic of Cyprus. So why should they share power with us? Since the election of Ersin Tatar, our new president, starting from President Erdogan, Vice President Oktay, Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu, President Ersin Tatar, Prime Minister Ersan Saner, and our current Foreign Minister Tahsin Ertuğruloğlu, all speaking with one voice. We are no longer interested in federation. If we sit on a negotiating table, it will be on a two sovereign state basis. If the Greek sit negotiating table to talk with us how to share this island, then there will be no negotiations. And I don't believe that in 2 weeks' time, I believe is in Geneva, United Nations General Secretary has called to see whether there is any common ground for starting negotiation. Well, I tell you now, there is no common ground. So the fact that some people speak about federation, federation is dead. As far as Ankara is concerned, it is dead. As far as Nicosia is concerned, it is dead. You are saying about recognition. How can we go for recognition when we are continuing with the discussion on negotiation on federation? Federation is closed, is finished. We are not negotiating. That's the position of Ankara. That's the position of Nicosia. Where do we go from here? Well, if recognition is to come, we don't expect it from Western Europe. We expect it from friendly countries like Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and so on and so on. We don't expect Western Europe, or particularly European Union, who is the main problem here. Because European Union is actually, last week, for example, they were arguing that European Union is an objective. It's not. European Union is there to support the Greek and Greek Cypriot view, to impose the will of the Greek Cypriots on Turkish Cypriots. Therefore, our way forward is this. We have enough of federation. There will be no talks on federation. We will not sit on the table, and this is the firm view. So there's no point about talking about bizonal federation. It's finished, over. Where we go from here is, yes, we go for friendly governments, and they exclude all the Western European governments. Forget Western European. And Meral was saying about international. When you say international, the world doesn't condone Western Europe, America. No. There is Asia. There is the Turkish
I didn't say it
states.
did.
Therefore,
I didn't say
please
it did.
don't mix
I
up
said
this.
global. I said global.
Not. Can I just
I
finish,
wasn't
Meral?
saying
I
that.
didn't
Can I
interrupt.
come back on that?
I've been
Because I
patiently waiting
was
for
agreeing
you.
with some of the things you said.
Meral,
The
You're
world
misrepresenting
does
me.
not consist.
Yeah, but don't misrepresent.
Yeah, but you have misrepresented, and I didn't interrupt you. Can you please don't interrupt, because this is otherwise it's going to
Carry
go
on.
into another big
Carry
propaganda.
on.
The
Okay,
world
carry
does
on.
not consist of Western Europe. There is a bigger world, and Turkey is
It did.
positioning itself in this bigger world. Therefore, our way forward is either Greek Cypriots will sit in and negotiate how to devolve Cyprus peacefully, or situation will stay the same. We will go our way and they will go their way. This decision, this policy is fixed. It's not negotiable. Whether or not we get recognition, and I will add further, which I'm sure they will please to hear, or with Turkey, a Monaco style, Puerto Rico style, Hong Kong style, or any other, our options are enormous. One thing is excluded. Federation is out of the way. No longer. Federation is not on our agenda. Integration with Turkey is on our agenda. How we do it is a matter between us and the motherland. Recognition is on our agenda, but federation is not on the agenda. So I think that answers the question of the, I think clearly answers the issues that's been raised in the last half hour.
Okay,
Thank
Meral, before we go to you, I just want to ask one more question to
come back,
Mehmet Bey
please?
about what he's saying. So, Mehmet Bey, what you're arguing, if I've understood correctly, is you're saying that the reason why this push for recognition is coming now is because all of the other options for federation or for unity in Cyprus have been exhausted. And so that's the sole reason why this is coming now. You don't think that it's perhaps because of changing geopolitics in the region? Perhaps Brexit might have something to do with it? You think it's wholly a
Montana, sorry to interrupt you. France Montana was the last chance. The Greek Cypriots have been spoiled by European Union to such an extent that they have the liberty to reject all. I say to you once again, I think the Annan Plan, because Annan Plan, to my understanding, was
we
the
know
end
the
of the
history.
Turkish Cypriot. So
We know the history.
therefore, going forward, either two-state solution or it stays the same. We go our way, Greeks go their way.
Okay, so Meral, I've got a question for you, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to retort Mehmet Bey before I get to my question.
Well, I like to
And then
respond
me.
because
And
I
then
just
me.
respond because I didn't mention federations actually, but to be honest, if all these countries, I just say Europe, I talked about the UN Security Council and the members, who, as you know, include China and Russia. So, you know, when we talk about the global world now, we are looking beyond Europe. But of course, Europe is very important because the Republic of Cyprus is an full EU member. But all these countries you mentioned that are going to suddenly recognise the TRNC, why haven't they done so in the last 38 years? That's my first question. Azerbaijan, as I understood it, did initially, but then, of course, America stepped in and persuaded it, and it withdrew it straight away. All these countries, Turkey at the moment, I think you need to look at what's going on in Turkey. You talk to people in Turkey interested in Cyprus. They've got their own problems. They've got their own financial, economic, and real issues going on. President Ertan at the moment is trying very hard to improve his relationship with Biden, the Biden administration. That's where the priority lies. He's trying very hard to improve the relationships with the EU. President Erdogan may say our future EU. So Turkey lies with Azerbaijan, Indonesia and Pakistan. This is very interesting. I'm not quite sure where you think your future lies with Pakistan. Rely very heavily on the United States and the UN. I think this is a pipe dream, and I do wish you would be honest with people. You are not being honest with the people of the TRNC. We don't need history lessons. I agree with you. I was agreeing with you till you got that point. I don't think the Cypriots want to share power. I agree with you. Crimea was almost a
I agree.
Turkey, I know people, I've spoken to people who were in the room when it happened. And I can tell you that the EU commissioner, the EU people that were there were shocked and horrified at the behaviour of President Anastasiades. So don't say the EU, you know, this EU bashing as well. I mean, you know, they made a mistake years ago. Jack Straw was on another programme recently who was part of that mistake, admitting it, and now he's saying, oh, of course we should all recognise a two-state solution. Well, frankly, he knows that that's not possible. But, you know, Crans-Montana, the Turkey was so keen on a deal, the one that your Mehmet is so angry about, that they were going for. They've even withdrawn their guarantor rights. They even said they're withdrawing most of their troops to about 800, and even that would be phased out over 3 years. So that's what went on there behind closed doors. So the idea that Turkish Cypriots from Mehmet Bey's party are still clinging on to the motherland is doing what the motherland is good for the motherland. Turkey will do what's good for Turkey, and Cyprus is incidental. And I think we need to understand that. You know, at the end of the day, of course they've got some loyalty to us, but in a way, Turkey has got very serious economic problems. Unemployment is rife. The Turkish lira is plummeted, and of course, you know, people in North Cyprus feel that as well. So we don't need history lessons, Mehmet Bey. We need solutions to the future now. And when you say, oh, the federation is dead, they can go their way, we go our way. What is our way? Another 50 years of sitting there doing nothing. Of this, non-recognition. That's what the future
Alev,
holds.
I can
That's
see you're very eager to say something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but
could
I
you
need
just
to respond to
interject
this because
very quickly?
I like people to be honest to what our options are, and I'm trying to be honest. I agree with you. The Republic of Cyprus, the leadership there of Anastasiades, and they're actually embroiled in corruption at the moment, his government. So he hasn't got a lot of agency, even if he put a referendum to his people. At the moment, from where we see it, from the United Kingdom, he's got his own problems. I don't see how he would ever persuade his country to vote for a federal state to give up some power when he's got so many problems of his own. So the idea
Meral,
that is that
Meral, thank you very much for that. I actually haven't got over to the question that I want to ask you yet, so I just see that Alev is very eager to add something. So Alev, could you just keep it brief? Because we still have a few more questions.
Yes, very brief. I just think that really, I hope these are going to be headlines, because Mehmet Bey has made it very clear that he sees us being integrated into Turkey. And I will tell you that most Turkish Cypriots are not happy with the idea of ilhak, or complete integration. And just coming back to the economic problems, let's remember that when the tele falls 12 to the pound, remember that people in Cyprus pay their rent in pounds. So their outgoings go up and their wages don't. Their wages shrink and their outgoings go up.
Yeah.
So,
and their pensions, those
those
who get pensions.
Exactly. And so the point I want to emphasize, that from here we can say, oh, well, 50 years and still going on. But there is a crisis, and we really need to do something and think about our own community. And I'd say we're all agreed that there's nothing in it for Anastasiades. And yes, he's up to golden passport issues. He hasn't prepared his community. That's why we have to do the hard work. And as Meral has pointed out, the EU in this sense does have some sense of responsibility. I don't think we get a great deal of help from the British and the Greeks and the Turks as guarantor powers on this, but certainly Europe does want this mess cleared up, and we have made progress. And people like Niyazi Kızılyürek, who was then called a traitor, I think he's an amazing guy who's done a lot. Just think that on the other side, they elected a Turkish Cypriot.
No, we don't. I think this is the thing.
Now, Meral, I just want to ask you quickly.
Can I just ask? Sorry, can I just get this one thing in? I mean, this thing about Mehmet Bey was really angry about this. The idea of a federation. The idea of a federation now is very different from what was proposed many years ago. The one that I would think we should look at is a very loose one, where more and more power is given to the two constituent states. So, for example, can you imagine that you have something like a Turkish Cypriot US ambassador? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine a Turkey being a UN or EU ambassador, the power that they would wield? For the first time, we would have people around the world who had status. But I'm afraid Mehmet Bey wants us to remain where we are, in our corner, diminishing as a country, diminishing as a people. There's no future there. There's no future there. And if you're looking to Turkey to solve all your problems, you know, I love Turkey. I love the Turkish country, the people, the culture. I love it. I have I have family there. But I'm afraid the going now is dragging the TRNC with it, and you don't want to be dragged down in that. There's no prosperity as well. People are suffering in North Cyprus, and I think you need to recognise that, and your party needs to find solutions for the people living in North Cyprus, instead of all this rhetoric about, you know, two-state solutions and all the rest of it. You don't have a plan. I've heard nothing. All I've heard is a history lesson. Plan. How you're going to achieve it. You're looking to Turkey. Turkey's looking to improve its own relationship with the EU and America. That's the reality, not Indonesia and Pakistan. That is a dead end, and I think you should be honest with people.
So Meral, you're in a very unique position in the Turkish Cypriot community, in that you are a Turkish Cypriot who is involved in British politics. So you get to share with us maybe some insights that others can't really share with us. So first of all, I know that you're involved in certain types of Turkish Cypriot lobbying for certain Turkish Cypriot causes, even if it's not recognition, but you're doing it nonetheless. But as we can see just on this program alone, I think it's a very good example of the diverse stances that Turkish Cypriots are taking, both here and in Cyprus. So how difficult does that make your job in your conversations with your colleagues in the House of Lords, in convincing them to support Turkish Cypriot causes, considering there's no consensus? And at the same time, could you perhaps share with us what's the general mood among members of the House of Lords, among parliamentarians that you may be mixing with? How do they view the Turkish Cypriot community in the UK particularly?
Well, the answer to the question is the majority don't view the Turkish Cypriots. They don't even know they exist, unless they're MPs who happen to have a large Turkish Cypriot community, constituents. The problem is that it doesn't register. Turkish Cypriots sadly don't, but of course those that I'm privileged to work with, there's about 20 or 30 who are part of the all-party parliamentary group that I'm the vice chair of for the TRNC, are committed to improving the lives and raising a profile of Turkish Cypriots as a people. We don't take a particular view on recognition not, but certainly one thing we do want, and we've been calling for years and years, is proper lobbying to raise our voices. And what's is very dispiriting for me, and you asked me what the problems are, and as I'm talking as a British politician, is the disunity, this division, this constant sniping. No one's interested, I can tell you now. When they hear two sides like this, when they hear, someone saying, oh, this is dead, we're going back to the motherland, or someone else is saying, we're this, they're not interested. People lose interest. We're not that important in the world stage. So I think we need to have a formula and a plan and a strategy to raise the profile, to say why the continuing isolation of Turkish Cypriots, it's wrong, it's inhumane, it's immoral, given the promises that the EU made. We have observer status. How many Turkish Cypriots watching this programme know that we have observer status on the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe? President Tatar, when he was, before he became president, he used to attend regularly. Has anyone asked for any reports? What happened at those meetings? What influences took place? What meetings? Imagine being in Parliament regularly and the influence you could have. What is that influence? I'd like to know. And also Turkish Cypriot politicians regularly attend. That's been going on since 2004. After the failure of the Annan referendum, they agreed to observer status. That should have been built on. They should have pushed harder for all the embargoes to be lifted on Turkish Cypriots. I don't see that happening. Why are nobody lobbying for that? Why is nobody saying we need our financial independence? We need to export some of our goods. Why is nobody lobbying instead of lobbying to become more integrated with Turkey? I just don't understand that. The longer you do that, the more the British Parliament is just not interested. And it's a shame. I've been told that the Foreign Office now, the British Parliament, is very much engaged and would to resolve the Cyprus issue. They've had so many failures on Brexit, COVID and all the rest of it. This is something they see as a win. They could actually do some good. So they are very much engaged. They're in listening mode. But who's talking to them? I'm sure the Greek Cypriots are talking to them because they talk all the time. Who is talking to them from the Turkish Cypriot side? if I'm to listen to what Mehmet Bey just said, that nobody's talking because they think the United Kingdom waste, or the EU, the United Kingdom, all a waste of time. We should be talking to Pakistan. I can tell you now, we should be talking to them. We should be trying to influence. We've got voting rights. We should be lobbying hard. What do we lobby? We're too busy fighting amongst ourselves. We don't speak with a united voice. The Greek Cypriots have a united voice. They are a united lobby, and we're not. We're disparate groups, too busy fighting and squabbling over all sorts of issues. And I do think it's depressing. Mehmet Bey said, "Oh, we've done that. We negotiated at Kranz." No, you didn't. Mustafa Akıncı did that, and before that was Mehmet Ali Talat. Your party has never negotiated for anything, for a federal solution. You've just gone into this mode of being opposed to anything, the same as the Greek Cypriots, actually. So we go no further forward.
Okay, Meral, you've raised some very good points.
We don't get bigger, we don't get smaller.
Meral, you've raised some very good points, and I just want to give Mehmet a chance to answer some of those points.
Yeah, but I don't want to have a history lesson again. I think that's insulting to me.
We're approaching the end of the programme, and I feel that Mehmet has got a few important things that he needs to say. And I have a few important questions I want to ask you.
Come on, we know the
Bey,
history of Cyprus. I don't want a history lesson.
Mehmet Bey, I actually have a few questions.
If you don't know the history,
Mehmet Bey, can you let me answer the questions, please?
I do know the history. I do know the history.
We do. We lived it.
I do know the history. I know very, very
Meral
well.
Hanım, with due respect, if you know the history of Cyprus, you wouldn't be talking like this. The federation will lead to bloodshed. In 450 years of Ottoman conquest, Turks and Greeks have always lived side by side, never mixed. They went to different places of worship. They went to different schools. Their coffee shops were different. From 1955 to 1970.
So we're getting a lesson now.
It is important.
We need to move away from the history, and I want to ask you a question about lobbying.
Is not
this is why we have no unity now.
Look, there is
we need to
no
ask you a
point
question about the future, not the past.
There is no point about arguing about federation. Federation is finished. Either there will be a two-state solution, or the status quo will remain. So there is nothing further to add to it.
Status quo then.
People talk
Status
about
quo then.
by zonal, by federation. We've closed.
Why don't you be honest with people then?
We are being
Why
honest.
isn't your party being honest?
We are
You
not
are fighting for the
negotiating
status
federation.
quo.
That's the end of it. That's the future for us. The future for us is either the Greeks will accept that there are two sovereign people in the island of Cyprus, or there will be no negotiation. Simple as that. That's our future.
Well, there's no negotiation then. Why are you going there? Why are you going to the talks?
Whether we accommodate ourselves in a world which may be outside the Western world is another matter. But the important thing is this. There is no federation on the table. It's finished. Move on. Alternatives. Two-state recognition, integration.
Mehmet Bey, I just want to ask you about UBP's plan.
You can't make shouting.
Mehmet Bey, I just want to ask you about UBP's plan. Now, Meral raised some good points, and I want to ask you a few questions about the future. How does UBP want to take us forward from here? Now, I want to give an example of Kosovo. Now, Kosovo is a state that declared independence in the year 2008, and that was against the wishes of Serbia, actually, who they broke off from. And Serbia to this day doesn't actually recognize Kosovo. Yet Kosovo has gained recognition from about 1/3 of the countries in the world, including some European Union nations, whereas some don't recognize Kosovo. So they've even divided EU opinion. They've been able to get that success in just a few years, whereas us as the TRNC, we've not been able to do that. And even countries such as Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which are breakaway regions of Georgia, they've been able to get 2 or 3 countries to recognize them. And there's a few commonalities that these countries have, and that is that they have members of the United Nations Security Council backing them up, even if it's just one, even if it's just Russia, even if it's just America. So that kind of seems to me to be the way to open the world up to get more countries to recognize. Now, the Turkish Cypriot community in the UK is about 400,000 people. We'll have better statistics on that when we get the results of the census,
Yeah.
but that's an
Census, yeah.
estimate right now. For me, it seems obvious that our ally in the UNSC is Britain. It's the most obvious target for us to get on our side to open up the recognition
Exactly.
for other countries. So, for example, we can sit here talking about Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Pakistan, but these countries, as much as they may love to recognize us, they're going to be reluctant to do so unless there's some kind of backing from the UNSC. And in order to do that, you have to mobilize the Turkish Cypriots here in the UK. But as you can see, just from this program alone, we have many different opinions. There's no consensus. And we don't have a presence. We don't have an MP. We don't have anything like that in the UK. So the UBP, for me, it seems like it's the job of the UBP to convince, first of all, the Turkish Cypriots in the UK, not just as UBP, but as Turkish Cypriots as a community, because this campaign for recognition has to outlive the electoral term of UBP. It has to be such a consensus. So does the UBP have such a plan to organize and mobilize the Turkish Cypriots in the UK so that we can actually push the UK to get this done, to get this recognition done? Or are we just talking about statistics from the past?
Do you know the name of our
There's
party?
no plan.
National Unity Party. Your answer is there. Who's our nation? We are there to unite with our nation. Our party's name is National Unity. Ulusal Birlik. National Unity. We are there to promote unification with the Turkish. This is the answer. Should I say any more? That's your answer.
You answer the
That's the
question.
name of our party.
For me to be
National
convinced, I need to hear more.
going to integrate. Look, Turkish Cypriots' well-being, whether it's life or property, is with our motherland, Turkey. We do not trust the Greek Cypriots. Why should we put our lives and property at risk by in a forced marriage with the Greek Cypriots when we are in a minority and we know damn well what they want? Therefore, path is to unite with our nation. The name of our party is National Unity Party. So here is your answer.
So can I just ask, how many Turkish Cypriots in the UK have you mobilised behind your plan?
I would say to
Because
you
I must have missed
that,
it.
yeah, well, you have actually, Meral Hanım, because I would say to you that in England, America, Canada, Australia, I would say 80% of Turkish Cypriots support my view. The percentage changes in the
Status
Cyprus.
quo, just as we are then.
We,
Okay, because you do live in
80% of
Cyprus.
the Turkish
Presumably
Cypriots
doesn't
living
affect you.
in the United Kingdom, Australia, America and Canada supports two-state solution and under no circumstances want federation with the Greek Cypriots. That's 80% living abroad. However, the percentage changes in Cyprus. I would say to you that it's on a 50-50 path. This is because Greek Cypriots, together with Greece, and since 2004, together with European Union, have been lobbying at a column, have been recruiting Turkish Cypriots, creating this as
No, these are lies. These are actual
Turkish.
lies
Can we
again.
let Mehmet
Turkish,
finish, please?
can you please don't interrupt me? Look, I'm listening to you patiently. It is your job to make sure this goes fair. I am allowing the two ladies to speak. When I want to speak, they interrupt. What kind of program is this? There is no such thing as Cypriots. There is no Turkish speaking Cypriots or Greek-speaking Cypriots. Makarios himself said that the only homegrown Cypriots are our world-famous donkeys. He told this to Italian journalists. There are Greeks, Turks, Maronites, Armenians, and Gypsies. 5 groups.
How do you support what Bob said?
Have to by in Therefore, our see UBP out of the question. Out of the question. We are not discussing federation. What we will discuss is how to get.
Meral, since you seem very eager, we're going to go through our final statements for the show. So we're going to take maybe one statement, 1 minute to start with you. 2 minutes, if you can summarize for us what you want to say in this program, and then we'll move on to Alev.
Thank you. I want to see Turkish Cypriots unified and lobbying on what's right for Turkish Cypriots living in North Cyprus. For those of us living in London, we don't have to
on projects that join London and Cyprus. We mustn't get too pessimistic when it's just all to do with politics and politicians who don't necessarily want. Thank you.
Okay, and Mehmet, last but not least, let's hear from you in 2 minutes, if we can
All
wrap
I can
up.
say, all I can say that currently Ankara and Nicosia are speaking in one voice. is a forced marriage. We are not interested.
No, not,
On
no,
the
they're
table,
not.
there is
Can we just let him finish, please?
on the table there is two-state solution. If Greek Cypriots wishes to discuss, they are welcome. If they not wish to discuss, then we both go our own ways. What the future holds, anyone guess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mehmet Bey, and thank you to all of our guests today for joining us. Apologies if we've gone slightly over time, but there were still many questions that even I couldn't ask. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and hopefully we can continue this conversation on another program in the future. Thank you very much. I'm your host, Ertan Karpazli. Goodbye from me.